Today we're going to be talking about some travel tips.
Honey, you didn't make that sound very exciting at all.
Today we're going to talk about some exciting travel tips.
We just got back from a big trip to Portugal, a big 2-week trip. Actually, we were gone 16 days.
Yeah, and I think that's the longest I've ever been on a single vacation.
Me too. I think it is. It didn't bother me to be away that long. Did it bother you?
No, clothes got to be a challenge towards the end of it.
Clothes are a challenge, yeah. Yeah, 2-week trips are challenging. Like Jason said about packing for 2 weeks is challenging unless you can do laundry right. That's a challenge. It's also a little tiring because you're not used to doing fun things and having to be entertaining and getting out of the house and I don't know.
I think it matters how you pace yourself.
Right, I
in
agree
the
with
trip.
that.
So,
I agree with that. So we'll get into that with our travel tips, honey.
Yeah, let's talk about your travel tips.
Well, the first thing you have to do when you're going to go on a trip, right, before you get to the trip planning is you have to decide where you're going to go.
Yep, that's important.
Sometimes that takes me a while. Sometimes just that step takes me a while.
Well, the problem is there's just so damn many options,
I know. Yeah, there's always so many places that I want to go and not unfortunately, I guess fortunately, I would travel all the time. I pretty much in my mind start planning the next trip as soon as I get back.
Yeah, but budget's a challenge, right?
Time, budget.
Budget's going to tell you whether you're doing something fairly local or you're going to be going to another country.
Right. It's so nice. I'll get to our travel tips in just one moment, honey. I'm not too far off. But isn't it nice when you get older and you don't have to completely plan your travel time around your kids' school vacations and stuff?
No shit. Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's so many more options when you can go anytime year. If it's like, oh, we could go on this really cool trip in November because it's cheap then, that helps a lot.
I guess that's one of the few benefits of being old.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of benefits. We're not that old.
Maybe we should do a show on that.
Benefits of being old?
What's the benefits? I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that would like to know what the hell that is.
Oh, honey. I always tell people, no joke, that the older I get, the happier I am.
All right.
All right. So, and that's true. So, all right, getting to the travel tips. So once you decide where you're going to go, you have to do a little research. And I don't think everybody does this. You do some research, or I do, when you're deciding where to go. But then once you decide where you're going to go, I do quite a bit of research. And for me, research involves, and this is before I get to really planning, this is just researching the area. I kind of learn a little bit about history and culture. Sometimes I already know things that I want to see when I'm going to be there, but a little information about history and culture and kind of what life is like there. And then I start reading things or looking at things on YouTube. I do a lot of things on YouTube. There's so many cool podcasts and things like
Right.
that people do about travel. So this last trip we went to Portugal, and I don't know how many podcasts I watched about what to do when you're in Portugal.
Yeah, we watched them together.
Right. Yeah, which was fun, right?
Yeah, you learned a lot. Like, hey, I wouldn't mind seeing that,
Right. Yeah. And I had been to Portugal once before just for a week and just saw a little tiny piece of it. So I didn't know besides that, like what cities were cool to go to. So I did a lot of research about like cities and areas that were cool to go to, different things that we might want to do. And so that's my tip number one is kind of research your destination.
Yeah, no, that's a good tip.
Thanks. You think people do that?
I think it's pretty common that people research the trip, but I think there's probably a high likelihood that there's things they don't really think about that they need to research, like especially international travel, like how to deal with the currency exchange. Nowadays, you don't really need to exchange that much.
Before you go,
you want to keep it fairly limited. I mean, let the vacation play out, and you'll kind of learn what you need and what you don't, because you can pretty much use MasterCard everywhere.
Right. In fact, you can use credit cards everywhere. You need a little bit of cash, but you can use credit cards everywhere. So people think they have to do that in the airports and stuff where it's not a very good place.
That's what I just thought of. Yeah, there's no need to run up to the exchange at the airport because you can just go up to a normal ATM and withdraw cash from your account, and it's going to come in the local currency.
And personally for me, this is a tip I wasn't planning on. Your debit card works fine when you're in Europe. So you don't, for me, me, it's harder to get. You don't want to get cash advances and things like that with your credit card. So your debit card works just fine at those ATM machines. So anyway, you research your location. For me, like the first time I went to Europe, finding out that if I was in an Airbnb, that I might need to have those silly little adapters for my hair dryer and stuff. Yeah. If you're in a hotel, you don't have to worry about that, but that kind of stuff.
We used adapters the entire trip in Portugal.
That's true.
We would have been pretty much screwed without them
for charging our phones and things, right? Yeah, well, you do need to have some extra ones, yeah. And what else? I like just knowing that when you get there, what the people are like, what the tipping culture is. That things close sometimes in the afternoon and people eat late at 9 or 10 o'clock, and you're going to have to kind of adjust a little bit to the lifestyle. It's nice to know those things before you get there.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
Yeah. So
because Portugal, they eat late.
Yeah, they tell you don't even go any place before 8 o'clock. You'll be eating with the kitchen help.
Yeah,
That's true. So, and which is pretty true. So getting used to that. It's not. I think it's fun. I like that. I like that schedule myself. But
I know something else. I know something else that helps, and that's if you're going to a country with a different language, it's beneficial to learn a few words. Like hello and thank you. Thank you is a big one, right?
Those are that's the two most important things. Hello, goodbye, thank you.
Yeah, that'll take you a long way.
Yeah, and in my opinion, thank you is by far the most important thing. Yeah, and just learning how to say thank you and hello or good day or whatever they do, and doing that all the time. It's kind of fun to do after you get there for a little while, right? It makes you feel a little, like you belong there. And the people seem to appreciate that you're trying a little bit.
And I downloaded a translator.
The translators are great.
A translator on my phone, and that helped a lot. I mean, I didn't use it all the time, but there were a few times that it really helped figure some things out.
Right. We're talking mostly about, because we just got back from Portugal, international travel, but all these tips are they're the same if you're going around here. Like if you're going to New York City, doing a little research on how to get around or where to buy theater tickets or that kind of stuff. So do your research, and that's a good start. And then the next thing you do after the research, tip number 2, I'm moving on to tip number 2.
All right.
Is then you develop an itinerary based on your research. Yeah, this can bog me down quite a bit, especially if I'm going to a country or I'm going on a trip that's more than a week, more than one city, where you're going to be moving around. So you don't want to backtrack. You want to look at what makes the most sense. I like to fly in and out of one airport if it's at all possible. Sometimes it's not. And then you figuring out, if you're going to rent a car, go on a train, that kind of stuff. But all those things play into putting together your itinerary. I think for me, the big thing is I don't like to go to more than even if I'm gone for 2 weeks, I think this time we had 4, but 4 would be the max, different locations that I would want to go to, even in 2 weeks. I like to stay in one spot for a while and take day trips. I'd rather stay in one city for 5, 6, 7 days and take a couple of day trips, than be moving around all the time.
I agree totally. I mean, there's a couple of advantages to doing that, right? Like, first off, dragging your luggage from one town to another, it's a pain. It's usually a stressful day. You're either trying to figure out train tickets or renting a car, or there's things you've got to navigate that day, and then you're really not relaxed again until you're booked into your next place and you've got your next home set up.
Right. Travel days are wasted days, man. Not wasted, but you're tired. You don't get as much done. You're a little grumpy, and they can be a little challenging. So I like to have as few of them as possible. So I plan my itinerary as such.
The other nice thing is really when you go to a city, like whether it's New York City or Lisbon, you go into a city, it takes more than a day to get acclimated with the place and really get the feel of the culture. So I really like to have a more relaxed schedule where we're at least a few days in the same place.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. Like for a couple of reasons. Travel days are tiring, so that's a day where you don't get a lot done. And you're right, you don't get a feel for the place until 2 or 3 or 4 days in. And something I've done twice, you and I did it once, I did it the first time I went to Portugal, is just stay. Like we stayed in the south of France for just 1 week. We just rented that apartment, for 1 week.
Right.
But we took we wanted to go on a day trip that was a couple of hours away, and we really wanted to stay in this little area. So we just packed a little overnight case and we stayed in that area overnight. We just left our apartment for the whole night and we drove there and stayed. And I did that in the first time I went to Portugal as well. And I think that's a nice thing to do if you're going to kind of base yourself out of one city. It's much easier than saying, oh, I want to go to the seashore this one day day and you have to check out and pack your stuff and go check in for just one day. That's kind of a pain in the ass. I do my research and then I put together my itinerary. So that's the
Yeah.
number two is then you put together your itinerary. Then once I have my itinerary, I make a list of things that I want to do.
So your itinerary is not your list of things you want to
No,
do.
my itinerary is simply getting from place to place. We're going to spend 5 days in Lisbon. We're going to spend 4 days in Porto. We're going to go to the wine country for 3 nights, and then we're going to do this. That's my itinerary. That's what I decide. Same with Italy. When we went to Italy, it's like we're going to go to Tuscany and stay in this place for 4 nights. We're going to go to Florence. We're going to go to Verona. We're going to go to Venice. That's just my itinerary.
Oh, so when you say a list of things to do, you're talking about more specific things once you're there.
Right. So then I'll make a list of the things that I know that we want to do. And some of them, like this time, because I had been to Portugal once before, it was more specific. But I don't know, say you're going to New York. New York's a good place as an example. And then you make your list of what you want to do. You say like, I really want to go to Ellis Island. I really want to see a couple of shows. I really want to go to the art museum. I really want to go to Central Park. You make your list of the things you want to do. And then in my mind, I prioritize them, or on my list, I prioritize them and kind of figure out which ones need more specific planning. Like, say we were going to be in Rome and I knew we want to go to the Vatican. Well, for me, because I've done my research, I know that I need to have a tour planned for the Vatican. I don't want to just go stand in line. So that day might have a specific plan. Like we are going to go to the Vatican on Tuesday at 11 o'clock in the morning because I have a tour planned.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that puts you back to the whole research thing, too, is knowing what you're getting into. Because you're right, going to the Vatican and the other place that was like that is the Louvre.
Right.
These places are huge. They're overstimulating. It's very worth getting a guide.
Like this trip and going to Lisbon, the one thing I knew I wanted you to do, because I had done it before and I thought it was cool, was go to Sintra for the day. And I knew it was really crowded. So that was the one day that I planned for us to have, someone pick us up at our hotel and drive us to Sintra because I didn't want to deal with, driving. And, so that was the one day that I planned. So I knew for sure on Monday, that's our Sintra day. Like I knew that was a definite. Most days I don't do that. It's more like, here's things to do in Lisbon. Here's some things that or maybe I should go back to New York. Anyway, whatever city. Here's things to do in this city that I think we want to do. And then I personally some people don't do this, but I think it's very stressful when you have a very rigid itinerary on trips. And I know you do too.
Oh, yeah. I hate that.
Yeah, I hate it too.
Yeah.
So I like to know, hey, we stayed out late last night. We drank a lot of wine and we didn't get up until 2 o'clock in the afternoon when our tuk-tuk driver, we didn't get up until 2 in the afternoon. So what are we going to do today? What are we going to do today? That's what we chose to do yesterday. What can we fit in today between now and dinner time? It's usually not that late, but you know what I mean?
I think it's real easy for people to overpack their itinerary of things they're trying to do. Coming into a city and just having a punch list of every tourist attraction there is and trying to knock it out in a day is crazy.
Oh, for sure it is.
But I think people try to do it. And for me, one of the things is, my job is stressful. So when I take a vacation, I want some relaxation involved in that vacation where I'm not just constantly looking at my watch trying to make the next thing.
Right.
Otherwise I end the vacation, I get back home and I feel like I need a vacation from the vacation.
Right.
Yeah.
That is the beauty of having a 2-week vacation too, is you do have the ability to build in some more downtime. Again, that's kind of where your research comes in. I can't overplay that too much, I don't think. I know from doing my research also, these are some things that might be cool, but if we miss them, it's no big deal. I've read people's reviews and they say like, yeah, this is cool to see, but you just go see it. Here's a good example. When we went to Verona, I personally wanted to go see the little Juliet house, right? The Juliet balcony.
And we did.
But I did my research and there were a lot of people that said, yeah, it's cute. If you want to go put your hand on Juliet's boob, that's cool. But it's not, it's not all that. It's not life-changing. It's not going to be.
You did put your hand on Juliet's boob.
Yeah, I loved and I loved seeing that. I wanted to see it. I knew I did. Some people would be like, I could give a shit about that. For instance, here's the thing I don't care about that much. Oh, here's the thing. Here's a good example. We went to Paris. We didn't care about going up in the Eiffel Tower at all.
Right. It's beautiful to look at without going up in it.
Yeah, I loved that we could see it from our balcony sparkling at night. It's beautiful. For me, every time I looked at it, it was just just that like take my breath away. Oh my gosh, we're in Paris together,
It was fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't need to go up in it. Now, some people, because I was like, I just don't want to spend, I don't want to buy the ticket. I don't want to stand in line. You go up in it and say, wow, I'm up high. And, right?
Right. Well, my fear on that is, do you really want to spend half of one of your days on that?
Right. That's how I felt too. So I do my research, so I kind of know those things. So I have my non-negotiables. I know if I'm in Rome, I'm going to see the Colosseum and go to the Vatican. And I know if I'm in Paris, I'm going to go to the Louvre, and we were going to spend a day going to Claude Monet's house. Those were absolutely our priorities. And then the other days, I have my list. Does that make sense?
It does. It does make sense. Yeah.
And it's nice because if you're, and the other thing too that we do, not everybody does, is I don't like to plan. We don't like to plan. I don't like to plan more than one structured activity a day. If we're going to the Louvre, I know that's going to be a tiring 3 or 4 or 5 hours, depending on how long you're going to stay there. Mm-hmm. And then I don't plan to go to the Louvre in the morning and the Notre Dame in the afternoon or whatever.
No, that's probably a good idea. That's probably a good point. By leaving your time a little more free, sometimes we're surprised by what we do.
Right.
Like we just happened to go by Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And wow, that's cool. And it wasn't really structurally planned into the trip.
Right. One of the things that we like, not everybody is like us, I realize that, but we like to see the countryside. We like to see the people. We like to I just look up like what neighborhoods are cool to go to. Like, remember one of our favorite things in Paris was the neighborhood up on the hill.
Oh, that was really cool.
We just spent the day doing that. So you do your research, make your list, prioritize your list, and we could go on and on. Then you can buy tickets for the things that you need to do. Because I would suggest big tourist attractions, go on a tour. A couple of other things that I look up. So for my tours,
you mean get a guide,
or tour. We met the tour guides. Get a guide like our day trip or the tours. And I look up. I use that Viator, Viator, Viator is what I typically use. There's a couple of them.
Is that a website?
It's a website. There's one called Get Your Guide, but I've used Viator for most of mine. It's worked out beautifully. I've had no issues. And that's also what I've used like when we've had cooking classes and things like that.
Oh yeah.
To set that stuff up.
Yeah, and that's been fun.
Yeah, that's been fun. So it's a great website. It's very helpful. For hotels, I've been using Booking.com a lot. I do use them all, but I've recently had a lot of success, I think, finding good places to stay. We found some pretty cool places to stay lately, haven't we?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's what I do. So do my research, make my itinerary, make my list, and then I add to my list. This is something not everybody does and maybe people don't think of. So I'm to my next tip, which is I also find out about food that I want to try because we like to eat.
Oh, I love to eat.
Yeah. So So especially this time in Portugal, but I find out like foods that we should try. I might look up restaurants that we want to go to. Like in Portugal, they have these little Bifana sandwiches. So we looked up what places had the best Bifana sandwiches that we want to try. And I watched some YouTube videos about that stuff too. But
yeah, that's one of my favorite things about traveling is trying the local food. There's so much good food out there. But one little trick we learned in Portugal was that Google Maps is really good there. Google Maps, and you could just open Google Maps and type in Bifana near me.
Yeah, that's true.
And boom, we just go to a restaurant we never imagined.
Yeah, it's really amazing the stuff you find. It's like crazy the stuff you find. So we made a list when we went to Portugal though, especially we had 5 or 6 foods that we knew we wanted to try. Like we found out certain sandwiches they have places, or we knew we wanted to try the grilled sardines and the octopus, and so we had kind of a list of
Anthony
things we wanted to try.
Bourdain loved Bifana, so I wanted to try that.
Yeah, so depending on where you go, I don't do this very often. If there's a restaurant that you really, really want to go to, sometimes you need to make those reservations far in advance and stuff too. If there's something that's really important to you.
Yeah.
I've only done that. I think maybe when we went to Paris for our honeymoon, maybe I made a reservation at a restaurant ahead of time, but I typically don't do that. There's so many good places to eat. It's not necessary.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
there's nothing wrong with it, but the problem with doing it too far in advance, though, is it blocks your time.
Definitely.
So you have to worry about where you're at so you can get there by that time.
Yeah, it's funny. Food, my kids get stressed out. Me just trying to find a restaurant sometimes, even local, is, I think, stressful for others. That's why Jason doesn't.
I could see that.
That's why Jason doesn't tell me where we're going to go. Like if we're walking around a city and I'm stopping to look at menus, it might take us a while before I decide on one.
Well, I think you get overstimulated real quick, you know.
Yeah, I do. I have this worry in big cities, especially, that I'm going to go someplace that's just touristy. I have this like, I want to go someplace that's good. You know, I don't want to waste my meal here on someplace that's just, you know, mediocre.
Well, there's some tricks to that. Now, on that one, if you want to try to make sure you're not really eating in a touristy restaurant that's catered to tourists, you got to step away from the tourist attractions.
Right.
Get back a couple blocks away before you find the restaurant you want to eat at.
Yeah, but even then, like say, even in Lisbon, when we were kind of off the, you know, people are like, oh, come in, you know, and you're like, how good can this restaurant be if they're begging people to come in? I always think that.
That's pretty common.
Don't you think that though sometimes?
No, but if you believe that, you wouldn't eat anywhere before the end of the night, because all of the major restaurants, they pay people to book, you know, to fill the house.
Yeah, just because there's so many.
Their job.
And I don't think we had a really bad meal on our trip. We had a couple that weren't as good as the rest, but they were all pretty good.
I thought the food in Portugal was excellent.
Yeah. So we include food in our planning. That's my only tip, is I do include food in my planning. So you got your research done, you got your itinerary, you got your list of things, you got your tours planned and your days planned. I like to leave a couple of days free. And honestly, not everyone's like this, but think about going on a beach vacation. Well, even when I go to a city vacation, I need to have a day to just chill. Sometimes you get tired after a week, right? I like to have a day. I don't feel guilty if we waste a day.
Yeah, like on a 2-week trip, I mean, like on this last trip, we had an actual down day where we just relaxed. We did the same thing on our mountain trip.
We did.
And it was actually nice. It was like a recovery day of just resting and relaxing. And then the very next day, we're right back at it.
So I like to leave a couple of days kind of free for chilling out. And then I develop a packing plan, which this is minimal. It's not a big deal, but well, it's more like it's a combo packing travel plan. You know, I figured out, figure out if we're going to use public transportation or rent a car. We rented a car for part of our trip in Portugal, but not all of it. And same thing with Italy. We only rented a car when we were in Tuscany, and we used trains the rest of the time. But I've learned a few things from my few overseas travel, and also for local travel. If you're flying, I have kind of my plan. Like if I'm going to have too short a layover, I only take a carry-on, which I rarely do that because I have to have my hairspray. But
yeah.
But sometimes you have to have just a carry-on. And then I've learned that if you're going to use trains and things in Europe, I used to tell my sister-in-law, she travels all the time, how in the world do you guys go to Europe for 2 weeks with one little suitcase? And I couldn't do that. She's like, well, you find out when you're getting on trains and stuff, you don't want to have a big, heavy suitcase. And she's
it's
right.
a pain to move them around. Yeah. So your packing plan, what you're getting at there is your packing plan needs to mold to what you're actually doing.
Yeah. You know, if you're going to be able to wash clothes, how many clothes you need to take, and then how you're going to get it there and back, you know, what makes sense. So one thing that I came up with, or we kind of came up with together, was for our future travels in Europe is I have a hard time. I don't want to take one of those humongous suitcases because they're just too cumbersome.
Yeah.
They're too heavy. Yeah. I'm afraid I'm going to put over 50 pounds of stuff in it.
But one thing to be aware of when you go to Europe, it's highly likely that you'll go to a hotel and where the taxi drops you off, you still got to drag your suitcase
sometimes
several blocks to get to the door of where you're going.
It just depends. We've had to do that a few places.
Yeah, it can happen.
Even in like New Orleans, sometimes that happens. But in Europe, yeah. Well, we had to. Oh, that's right, we did. Anyway, yeah, you have to. We took our suitcases all the way from our hotel to the train station, though, and stuff.
Right.
That was a pain in the ass. They were big and heavy. Yeah. Did we only have 2 suitcases though?
What trip are you talking about?
When we went to Italy last year. Or did we have 3? I think we had 3.
I think we had at least 3.
I think we had 3, which was awful. Yeah, that's really hard. So that's what made us come up with this plan. I came up with this plan that I'm going to find these cool travel backpacks.
Yeah, and you did.
And I did. Yeah, I did. Now they're big. So the whole idea was that instead of having 2 suitcases, instead of having a carry-on and this medium-sized suitcase, I could take my medium-sized suitcase and maybe someday, honey, I'm working on it, I could get down to just a carry-on size suitcase.
That's hard for me to imagine.
It is.
Yeah, first off, you got to get your hairspray maker to make a micro bottle for you.
They actually do, but I have to take about 5 of them. And then, maybe not 5, for 2 weeks, I don't know. But no, it's shoes is the problem.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. Yeah. If you had your way, if you had the room for it, you could have a suitcase just full of shoes.
Well, I try to not take more than like 3 pair, but it's hard. It's really hard. I have to have a brown pair and a black pair, and it's even worse in the winter because I have to take boots and stuff. So that can be very challenging. But I decided that if we had backpacks, we could just take one suitcase and put our extra stuff in a backpack, and that way, if we were going to get on trains and stuff,
Right.
we'd just have all we'd have to pull on the street was one suitcase, and we'd have our backpack.
Now, it was a great idea because the backpack, that's your carry-on the plane. And then as long as you had that backpack, if you do a day trip or like a single overnighter like you were talking about earlier, just pack the backpack and leave your luggage in your primary hotel.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly my thought. And
I've got one of them here.
oh yeah, it's big. Show everybody, honey. This is a really nice backpack. I did some research on this too.
Yeah, this is it. The maker name is Cotopaxi, and the model is the Alpo 35. So that's a 35 liter.
See, it's got this alpaca on it, honey. Alpaca, like a llama.
Okay, yeah, it's the llama backpack. But anyway, very nice. So one of the interesting things about it is that makes it really nice for traveling is when you open it, it opens up like a suitcase rather than a backpack. So it opens up.
Yeah.
You got nice compartments everywhere.
Yeah.
And on this trip, we both had to take laptops.
We did.
I was video editing on the trip, and you had to work. So when you bought these backpacks, you made sure they were capable of carrying
Laptops.
computers. So it's got a padded laptop slot right here. Very nice.
Yeah, it's a great little suitcase.
I'll put a link to this.
Okay,
in the description box of this video.
Another thing for us was our layover was fairly short on this trip, and I thought, well, from now on, when I go to Europe, I'm going to pack 2 or 3 days worth of clothes in my backpack, and I'll just at least have something. I won't get stuck without clothes But we used those as our carry-ons, and that worked.
But those are nice backpacks.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm glad we got them. I'm glad we have them. So that's it. I plan my packing. I plan my food. I plan my tours. I plan my itinerary. I do my research, and we have great trips.